William George Bowen. Prior crimes. Under CDC number B70175. Date November 17th, 1968. P207 kidnap. P286 parentheses B1 sodomy with child. P286 parentheses B2 sodomy with child. PT P288 L and L. P288A L and L. Date September 8th, 1975. P288A. Lewd and lascivious conduct. Alias none. Race white. Date received March 22nd, 1982. Date of birth January 8th, 1947. Education not equitable. Location San Quentin State Prison. Married no. Sentence County of Trial Los Angeles, Orange County. Sentence date March 12th, 1982. August 26th, 1983. County of residence unknown. County of offense Los Angeles, Orange County. Offense date August 27th, 1979. November 30th, 1979. January 9th, 1989. Court action affirmed. Court date August 29th, 1988. Case number. Hold on. A3609755C4750. Come on, convictions. First degree unaliving with special circumstances, 14 counts. Robbery, 3 counts. Sodomy, criminal penalty, Los Angeles County death, March 12th, 1982. Orange County death, August 26th, 1983. Victims, unaliving, 14 convicted, 21 confessed to, 22 through 36 plus suspected. Span of crimes, November 17th, 1968 to June 2nd, 1980. Country, United States. State, California. Date apprehended June 11th, 1980. In prison, San Quentin. William George Bowen was born in Willanac, Connecticut on January 8th, 1947, the second of 3 sons to Robert Leonard Bowen Sr. and Alice Dorothy Coate. Both parents were alcoholics, and his father an ill-tempered World War II veteran who physically abused his wife and children. His mother suffered from severe mood swings and frequented a bingo parlor while her sons remained unattended. She was regarded as having a domineering and emasculating presence in Bonin's early life. In January 1950, William's father, a compulsive gambler, gambled away their home in Andover, Connecticut, forcing the family to reside in William's maternal grandmother in Willanac. In spite of this dysfunctional environment, William and his brothers were actively raised Catholic and baptized according to church doctrine. They attended St. Mary Catholic School, where staff repeatedly made complaints of William's aggression toward other students, truancy, and other misbehavior. And riding his bike into a group of young girls, he was briefly placed in juvenile hall. After returning home, he was reportedly more uncooperative toward his parents than before. In September 1953, William and his older brother Robert Jr. were placed at a Franco-American school, a Catholic convent in Lowell, Massachusetts. The convent enforced harsh discipline by staff, with extreme assault being commonplace. Oh my goodness. William recalled nuns forcing him to punch a fence when he misbehaved. Records indicate he was observed to function well in this structured environment. According to witnesses, William was bullied and was once actually assaulted by an older boy in 1955. According to William, the older boy approached William for actual, and William asked the boy to tie his hands behind his back, which he said would allow him to feel secure and less frightened. William was then bound and actually assaulted. During this time at the convent, neither parent visited William or his brother, and William became worried his parents had died. William was to remain at the convent until May 1955, when he returned to live with his parents in a home owned by William's maternal grandfather in Mansfield. In Mansfield, William attended Annie Vinton Elementary School with his younger brother, Paul, where he was ridiculed as Bugsy Bonnie. He became a juvenile delinquent who quarreled with students. William recalled feeling shame at his actual attraction to younger children and male teachers. Neighbors later failed to recollect his parents spending time with their children, and one were never absorbing them were unkempt and hungry, provided meals and clean clothes to William and Paul out of sympathy. Until William's first incarceration, the children were left with their maternal grandfather by William's mother, a no child Looster, who had actually abused her. She later speculated that her father l- lested his grandsons. William and Paul were also left with Robert Jr., who, having received the brunt of his father's abuse, often beat and belittled his siblings. Largely devoid of consequences and paternal supervision, William stole hubcaps, license plates, and metal tags off vehicles around town. In 1957, he was placed in a juvenile detention center for these and other petty crimes. While incarcerated, William was molested by an adult counselor. Following his release, he began actually fondling his younger brother Paul. After 6 months, however, Paul informed their mother of William's fondling, and William was forced to sleep in a separate bedroom. William later confessed to molesting young boys and exposing himself to a 10-year-old girl. Yo, what? In 1959, William attended middle school adjacent to Covenant High School. Despite showing a strong aptitude for math and science, he had otherwise mediocre grades. In late 1960, the family faced the prospect of foreclosure, and William's mother kicked their father out of the home, winning custody of the siblings. The parents reconciled, however, after their father was offered lucrative employment as a machinist in Downey, California. In early 1962, they purchased a tract home in nearby Torrance. William attended North High School in Torrance, where he was regarded as a social outcast. However, Paul later recalled him as an outwardly well behaved teenager. William was uncomfortable around his peers and is not known to have formed any friendships throughout his adolescence. He spent his time frequenting a local bowling alley. By his teenage years, William held an intense interest in pedo, pedo, pedophile, but kept his emerging feelings a secret. His pederasty became the basis of conflict with his mother, leading to frequent arguments. He rarely attempted to interact with girls, but once reluctantly dated a girl named Linda to please his mother. After dropping out of high school in 1966, William molested several neighborhood children. His mother reportedly refused to acknowledge these acts or his escalating antisocial behavior, but frequently worried he would be arrested. She prayed for him and warned him often. Much to his frustration, eventually she evicted him from her house for undisclosed reasons. Lacking motivation and frequently borrowing money from his parents, William joined the United States Air Force with his mother's encouragement. In December 1966, he became engaged to Linda, a decision largely determined by William's mother, who felt it would quarrel his attention to pubescent boys. During the engagement, he repeatedly told Linda that he had recurring nightmares about the actual assault and unaliving of a young woman. During his military service, William completed a general equivalence diploma and served as a cook for 4 months in Alaska. He was arrested for death on October 25th, 1967, but the charges were dropped due to his imminent deployment to Vietnam. Stationed in Pulo Base Camp, he served 5 months of active duty in the 205th Assault Support Helicopter Unit as an aerial gunner, logging over 700 hours of combat and patrol time. William later claimed that his wartime experience instilled misanthropic beliefs. Despite this, he is known to have risked his own life on one occasion while under enemy fire to save a wounded fellow airman. For this act, William received a medal in recognition of his gallantry, among other medals. William said he engaged in alleged consensual relations with four young girls and had a number of homosexual encounters in Vietnam and once in Hong Kong. He also confessed to relations assaulting two soldiers under his command at gunpoint. Huh? Around the time of the Tet offenses, Williams served nearly 3 years before receiving an honorable discharge on October 25th, 1968, at the age of 21. Upon returning home, he discovered that Linda, who had given birth to their son, had left him to marry another man. Damn. To end their relationship reportedly left him extremely frustrated. Working as a gas station attendant, William returned to Downey to live with his parents, whom he resented for frequently requesting his help. Several family members noted difference in his behavior after his military service, although William refused to explain these changes. On November 17th, 1968, William picked up 14-year-old Billy Jones in Arcadia, California. While driving his mother's car, William offered to take him home, but Billy attempted to flee the vehicle in response to William's repeated questioning regarding homosexuality. Driving him to a nearby shopping center, William handcuffed and, and aped him, knocking him unconscious in the process. Then he dropped Billy off at a park. Returning home, Billy's mother prompted report William to police. On November 26, William picked up 17-year-old hitchhiker John Treadwell of Torrance. William began asking him about tags and homosexuality before accelerating the vehicle and producing a pow power. Boeing William parked in a secluded area and then he aped John and bludgeoned him with a tire iron. William threatened that he had friends who would aid in avenging him if John told the man of what had happened. On December 4th, it was reported to the Torrance Police Department that 17-year-old Alan Perut, that a man with medium-length dark hair, olive complexion, had offered him a ride before deviating from the highway and handcuffing the boy, who was extensively relation assaulted in the vehicle. On January 1st, 1969, William offered a ride to 12-year-old Lawrence Brittman in Hermosa Beach. Ignoring the boy's pleas to let him go, William began threatening Lawrence. He parked and forced Lawrence to perform oral relation on him, lusting and robbing him at gunpoint. He then threatened to unalive Lawrence if he ever reported the incident. On January 12th, William reportedly picked up 18-year-old hitchhiker Jesus Mongi, asking him about homosexuality before offering him $20 to perform oral relation. When Jesus attempted to exit the vehicle, William physically and relation assaulted him and was then handcuffed and aped. William threatened Jesus, "I'll rip your nuts off if you don't cool it." By this point, extensive efforts were being made by local police to locate a potential serial apist that fit Williams' description. On the 28th, an El Segundo policewoman confronted William, who had frightened 16-year-old runaway Timothy Wilson, who was present with William and William's mother's vehicle, noting William's frantic state and similar profile to the apist. She searched and handcuffed him. William repeatedly advised her to incarcerate him before insisting he was not responsible for his actions. He was indicted on 5 counts of kidnapping, 4 counts of sodomy, 1 count of oral copulation, and 1 count of child molestation against the 5 individuals he had abducted and assaulted or attempted to assault. Since the previous November and March, William underwent 2 psychotic examinations, after which he was determined to be a relation psychopath who had little control over his impulses and showed signs of depression and inappropriate emotional responses. Initially denying childhood abuse, William confessed to being molested at the age of 8 and suspected that he was molested on various occasions between 9 and 12 years old. In May, William recounted to a probation officer his recent stressful separation and admitted his guilt in molesting male youth. Although he was expressed desire to start a family and become a pilot upon his release, he said that his Vietnam service contributed to his criminal behavior, emphasizing his difficulties in seducing female partners. Since his return, he was evaluated to be seriously lacking insight and responsibility for crimes committed since his childhood. He pled guilty to molestation and forced oral copulation and was sentenced to the Escondido State Hospital in June 1969 as a mentally disordered relation offender considered amenable to treat. William arrived at the Escondido State Hospital on June 17, 1969. He was subjected to the battery of psychiatric examinations, which revealed that he possessed an IQ of 121 and displayed traits of manic depression, relation sadism disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. A physical examination revealed extensive scars on William's head and buttocks, which he claimed to have no money of obtaining, but no memory of obtaining, but were likely sustained in the Franco American orphanage. This lack of acknowledgement led experts to conclude William represented repressed memories of the more extreme aspects of his childhood abuse. They also noted the psychological and emotional implications of William's unhealthy relationship with his mother, upon whom he remained emotionally dependent in spite of her low opinion of him. She considered him worthless as a human being. Yo, your mother said that, yo? William regularly attended group therapy sessions. While incarcerated, psychiatrists noted his defensive, aggressive attitude toward other patients. But his refusal to acknowledge his homosexuality, William divulged his intentions to eliminate any future victims of his relation assaults if he deemed it necessary. He was classified as an extreme psychopath with a high probability of sadistic behavior. Under periods of psychotic breakdown, he was regarded as extremely disturbed, and his poor social skills with others were also viewed as hindering his own treatment. Despite this, William Worley participated in ex- experimental programs and was generally considered a non-violent, helpful, and conspicuous patient by staff. He had recited what he perceived psychiatrists desired to hear from him, believing he could manipulate them into granting him an early release. One psychiatrist wrote of William that he wanted to straighten himself out, but doesn't know how to go about it. In 1971, William was sent to the California Medical Facility, having been declared unsuitable for further treatment due to repeated relation engagement with inmates, two of whom were mentally challenged. This, as well as aligning and irritating fellow patients, resulting in William being beaten on several occasions. Damn. William was subject to further psychiatric examination, which dwelt with hostility toward his father and older brother. It was noted that his relation behaviors were compulsive in response to stress. He also sought to raise money for the family of another prisoner and reportedly appealed willingly for at least one treatment program. William was released from prison on June 11, 1974, after doctors concluded he was no longer a danger to the health and safety of others. And boy, were these doctors wrong. In July, William rented an apartment in Hollywood, Los Angeles, with intentions of circulating within the local gay community, but was largely unsuccessful due to poor social skills and soon relocated to his parents' new house on 1028 Angle Street in Downey. He briefly worked as a bartender in Fountain Valley and switched to being a truck driver for a Montebello delivery firm named Dependable Drive-Away. In December 1974, he was fired from the job. In February 1975, for wrecking a trailer. In March, William attended community college classes for 2 semesters. Around this time, he would pick up hitchhikers for the purpose of having relations, eventually establish a serious relationship with a single mother. While cruising for young boys on the night of September 8, 1975, he encountered 14-year-old David Allen McVicker hitchhiking in Garden Grove. David accepted Williams' offer to drive him to his parents' home in Huntington Beach. Shortly after David entered the car, William asked him if he had engaged in homosexuality. David replied that he had not. He asked to leave the vehicle, which prompted William to escalate it. When David attempted to leave, William produced a gun and drove him to a desert field. William ordered him to undress and then beat and aped him. William strangled him with his t-shirt and a tire iron. David pled for his life. William immediately stopped and apologized before reverting to casual conversation. He then drove David to his home, stating on the way, "You know what? You're an alright guy. I was going to unalive you, but to I want to come back for you and use you again." What a sick fuck. Soon, David phoned his mother, who promptly informed Garden Grove police of the incident. On October 11, 1975, William was arrested for 2 assaults months later. Upon arrest, he informed law enforcement that next time there won't be any more witnesses. He was charged with the ape and forcible oral copulation of a minor. and the attempted abduction of 15-year-old boy 2 days after Williams' assault on David. The second victim rejected Williams' offer of $35 for relations before exiting Williams' van and telling him to leave. In response, William drove the van onto the sidewalk in an attempt to strike him. William pleaded guilty to both charges, and on December 31st, 1975, he was sentenced to serve between 1 and 15 years imprisonment in California's Men's Facility in San Luis Obispo. In 1977, William was subject to further psychiatric examination and was indicted his sexual involvement with young boys related to his mother's micromanagement of his life. In March 1978, Williams' father suffered a major stroke, presumably induced by his alcohol addiction, causing him to be hospitalized at the Long Beach Veterans Administration Hospital, where his mother worked as a vocational nurse. In prison, William completed mathematics courses and training as a machinist. In order to secure employment, he also showed significant progress in individual therapy sessions. As a result, he was released from detention on October 11th with 18 months supervised probation. On November 1st, 1978, William moved to an apartment in the Kingswood Village complex, located approximately 1 mile from his parents' house. He became acquainted with his 43-year-old neighbor, Everett Scott Fraser. William became a regular attendee at Fraser's parties, where young men, drugs, and alcohol were rife. Everett considered him a respectful, placed individual and frequently introduced William to his young male acquaintances. The two also talked about their homosexuality. The following month, William established a relationship with a married mother who held a criminal record for child cruelty. He would take trips to Anaheim with her and her kids. In April 1979, Williams' parole supervision concluded. Later, William and his brother Paul relocated to Silverado and ran a bar called Alpine Inn. It was continually under scrutiny for noise violations. An incident occurring involving William reported locking a 6-year-old runaway in a room of the building, threatening a knife point to bury his body in the hills. Unable to obtain a permanent liquor license due to Williams' criminal record, the business venture was short-lived. Later, William purchased a Ford van while working at his older brother's plumbing business. I met Vernon Butts and I admired him. He had it all together. Everybody liked him. It was cool. Having him like me made me feel real important. I never had no friends. Though his frequent attendance at Everett's parties, William became acquainted with 20-year-old Vernon Robert Butts and 18-year-old Gregory Matthews Millie. Born and raised in Norwalk, Vernon was 9 years old when his father died and reportedly hailed from a broken home. Described by acquaintances as a shy and easily led by others, Vernon attempted suicide on 3 occasions prior to meeting William. At the time of his initial acquaintance with William, Vernon had developed a local reputation as an eccentric figure who had recently been fired from his employment as a magic store clerk due to his unkempt appearance and increasingly strange and unpredictable behavior. He was bisexual and frequently abused drugs and alcohol. Vernon was a drifter. Okay. All right. So, Millie was a illiterate Texas native and high school dropout with an IQ of 56, raised in Lakewood. Millie's mother reportedly had a serious dysfunctional marriages and severely neglected him. Millie viewed William as something as a father figure, and he often spent time with William in exchange for a relationship. William usually selected young male hitchhikers, schoolboys, or occasionally male prostitutes as his victims. The victims, aged 12 to 19, were predominantly Caucasian or Latino, slender, pale, and long haired. He either enticed or forced them into his Ford Econoline van. where they were overpowered and had their limbs bound with a com, combination of handcuffs, wire, or cords. Then they were then relation assaulted, extensively beaten and tortured before typically being unalived by strangulation with their own t-shirts and a tire iron. In order to minimize the chances of a victim escaping from the van, William removed the door handles on the passenger side and rear door. He stored ligatures, knives, pliers, wire coat hangers, and other such instruments in his vehicle to restrain and torture his victims. The victims were usually unalived inside his van before their bodies were discarded around the near various freeways in an apparent effort to weaken investigators. William often discarded his victims' bodies in counties far from their abduction. Okay. In a minimum of 12 of the unalivings, William was assisted by one or more of his four known accomplices. William later confessed that he felt a sense of social belonging with his accomplices that he had never experienced with anyone else. Vernon is suspected of occupying or assisting William at least nine of William's unalivings. He would scrapbook newspaper clippings of his unalivings and boast to Vernon and Fraser about them. Following media coverage of the two unalivings, William enthusiastically mentioned them to the co-workers of Dependable Driveway. To this, unaware of his crimes, William seemed obsessed with the case. He made daily trips to Orange County to buy newspapers. He would also tell people this guy is giving good gays like us a bad name. What? I guess. The first unaliving for which William was charged was that of 30-year-old Thomas Glenn Ludgren. Thomas was last seen leaving his parents' house in Reseda on May 28, 1979, shortly before his abduction. Thomas had reportedly told friends a man had offered to meet him at a skate park to take photos of him for a skating magazine. Thomas' partially clothed body was found the same afternoon in Agora. His clothes and severed genitals, the things, were discovered in a nearby field. An autopsy revealed that Thomas had suffered emasculation and extensive bludgeoning. In addition, he had been slashed across the throat, stabbed, strangled to death, and experts postulated that William's brutality was likely to attempt to silence his homosexual attraction to Thomas. William was assisted by Vernon. On August 4th, William drove from Silverado Canyon to Westminster to spend time with Vernon. He soon suggested that they ape and unalive a teenage hitchhiker. Vernon was amenable to this suggestion, and William encountered 17-year-old boy Mark Shelton near Beach Boulevard. William offered $400 for relation services. According to William, he masturbated Mark before Vernon began relation assaulting him. William drove into Canyon Pass in San Bernardino County as Mark had oral relation with him. William soon parked the vehicle and aped him. Enraged with his fear of resistance, William relation assaulted him, and William and Vernon physically assaulted him until he lost consciousness. He was violated with foreign objects, including a stick, causing him to enter a state of shock, which proved fatal. He was discarded beside a gravel road in Canyon Pass. Wow, for real? Wow. The night of the following day, William and Vernon encounter 17-year-old West German student Marcus Grabs, attempting to hitchhike from the Pacific Coast Highway. According to William, he engaged in consensual relations with the youth, who agreed to be bound in lengths of cords and ignition wire. William then retrieved a knife and intimidated Marcus as Vernon drove toward William's home. There, Marcus was again aped and beaten, and Marcus reportedly broke loose and punched William. This caused William to strangle him, and grab and stab him 77 times. His body was discarded in Malibu Creek the following day. Oh my gosh, I go over there when I want to go to the beach. That's where I go. On August 9th, William was again detained for molesting a 17-year-old boy from Dana Point. This violation of the conditions of his parole should have resulted in William being returned to prison in Orange County. However, an administrative error committed prior to William's scheduled court date resulted in his release. On August 13th, Frazier drove to collect William from jail. He later recollected that as he drove William home, William said, "No one's going to testify again. This is never going to happen to me again." At that time, Frazier had this interpreted this as a statement of remorse. Resuming his unaliving spree, William did not show at his court appointed time. William had also returned to his parents' house. He gradually developed a reputation as a child Lester among local residents due to his habit of inviting young boys to his house under the guise of providing alcohol and viewing pornography with them. Some neighbors recalled observing young boys accompany William inside, and they would later hear screaming and crying. William's family, who were occasionally present, claimed to have never witnessed William abuse them. On August 20th, William picked up 18-year-old Robert Warstick in Newport Beach. William allegedly coaxed him to perform oral relation by offering him $50 at knife point. William bound and aped him and then Vernon drove to Vernon's residence. On the drive, Vernon performed oral relation on Robert before striking him and taking William's place as the driver. William then tortured Robert by bending his fingers, then relation assaulting and bludgeoning him. Before strangling him, Robert's body was found on September 27th along Interstate 10. They're doing too much. On August 27th, William and Vernon abducted 50-year-old Hollywood boy Donald Ray Hayden on Santa Monica Boulevard. Vernon was driving the van. William offered him $50 for consensual relation, but Vernon made an accidental wrong turn. Donald became frantic, causing William to beat, bind, torture, and sodomize him. William then strangled him to death. Vernon performs oral relation on his corpse before the pair dumped his body at a construction site near the Ventura Freeway. It was discovered hours later. Donald rectal damage led to a coroner's theory that he had been impaled by a large object. Oh, these people are sick. Really? Relations with a corpse? But this ain't nothing new. On September 9th, William and Vernon encountered a 17-year-old boy from La Mirada, David Louis Morello, cycling. After David entered the van, William offered him money for a relation, which was refused. He then attempted to fondle David before binding him and driving to Vernon's residence, but Vernon's drove William relation assaulted and aped him and then traded places with Vernon, who performed oral relation on and beat David. Then they part the vehicle, bound him and aped him more, and he was extensively bludgeoned. Then strangled. His body was discovered alongside Highway 101 on the 12th, September 12th. Wow. Oh my gosh, I know all these places where they be dumping these bodies. William is not known to have unalived again until on or about November 1st. He and Vernon abducted an unalived and unidentified young man with brown hair, with William claimed to be 5 foot 6 inches tall and 18 years old. At some point, William allegedly said the man was to die because your folks paid us to find you and unalive you. The two beat him, and William strangled him to death before inserting an ice pick into his head. His body was discarded alongside State Route 99 south of the Bakersfield. What the hell? On November 30th, an unassisted William abducted 17-year-old Frank Dennis Fox from Bellflower. William sodomized him, strangled him until he died. His body was found 2 days later alongside the Ortega Highway, 5 miles east of San Juan Capistrano. The body bore signs of binding and blunt force trauma. 10 days later, a 50-year-old boy from Long Beach, John Frederick Kilpatrick, left his home and was offered money for relation services, but by William. After engaging in mutual oral relation, John was bound and aped by William before being transferred to his parents' house, where he was flagellated with string and then strangled to death with it. His body was discovered near Rialto. It was found on December 13th, but John remained known as a John Doe until August 5th, 1980. Damn, that's crazy. Because he's of his troubled background, which caused him to disappear for days at a time, his mother hesitated to report the disappearance. His friends also mistakenly reported seeing him at the mall. As a result, he was not reported missing until February. On January 1st, 1980, William encountered 60-year-old Ontario boy Michael Francis McDonald near the Chino airport under the guise of providing drugs for him to sell. William parked behind an apartment building in the van. William bound, beat, and aped him. His body was found alongside Highway 71 in the outskirts of Chino, and his body was not identified until March 24th, 1980. On the morning of February 3rd, William invited a 6-year-old boy into his parents' house to drink and have relation. William allegedly caught him stealing $100 from his billfold and furiously resolved to commit an unaliving. Later that evening, he drove to Hollywood with Gregory Millie with the specific intention of committing an unaliving with him. They encountered 50-year-old Charles Miranda nearby the Storewood nightclub along Santa Monica Boulevard. According to Gregory, William and Miranda had consensual uh, a relation in the van as he drove. William told Gregory that Charles was going to die. Charles asked why William would not just let him go. William replied, because he'll know us and know the van. William beat, bound, and gagged Charles and informed him that he had to unalive him to his earlier robbery. Charles began begging for his life. William began relation assaulting Charles, and Gregory unsuccessfully attempted to ape him in frustration. The two started physically assaulting him, and William strangled him to death. His body was later dumped in Los Angeles alleyway. 5 minutes after discarding the body, William suggested to Gregory to do another one. Greg initially protested and stated that he wanted to go home, but eventually complied. A few hours later in Huntington Beach, the pair encountered 12-year-old James Maccabee. James had been dropped off at a corner bus stop by his older brother, who had given him money to take the bus to Disneyland. He was lured into William's van and the promise he would be driven to his intended destination and that he would be given marijuana. According to Gregory, James got into the van and William drove to the grocery store. William parked the van and began hugging and kissing James before binding him and telling him he was being kidnapped for ransom. William began punching him, and as Gregory drove around, William aped him and bludgeoned him with a tire iron. William then forced him to sleep in his arms. Upon James awakening, Gregory and William beat him into unconsciousness, and William crushed his neck with a tire iron. William then strangled James to death, and he and Gregory discarded the corpse at a construction site in Walnut. James' body was discovered 3 days later. The next day, William was arrested for violating the conditions of his parole. He was remained in custody at an Orange County jail until March 4th. Please don't let this man get out. Please don't let this man get out. Following his release, he was hired as a truck driver at Dependable Driveway. William angered his boss, who was unaware of his status as a actual offender, by picking up hitchhikers in his presence on one occasion and by taking long unnecessary routes, which detectives later took interest in. On March 14th, William abducted 18-year-old Van Nuys man Ronald Glatton. William beat and sodomized him and hacked at him with an ice pick. Oh my goodness. The following day, his bound body was found behind an industrial building. Oh, there's so many of them. On March 21st, William offered a ride to 14-year-old hitchhiker Glenn Norman Baker. Glenn was beaten and aped with objects, then strangled with a ligature, burned with a cigarette, and at his rectum distended. Later that day, 50-year-old Russell Don Rule was abducted in Garden Grove. He was later bound, beaten, and strangled to death after an estimated 8 hours of captivity. The two boys' bodies were discovered in Cleveland National Forest close to Ortega Highway and found on the 23rd of March. On Friday evening in March, William offered 17-year-old William Ray Pugh a ride home. As the pair left uh, Fraser's residency, William accepted, and during the ride, William asked him to have relation. According to William, he attempted to leave the van once William had slowed down at a stoplight. William grabbed him, dragged him back inside, and attempted that he enjoyed abducting, restraining, torturing, strangling hitchhikers. William then informed William how to unalive without getting caught. William said that he had chosen to refrain from relation, assaulting, and unaliving William, not out of sentiment, but because the pair had been seen leaving Fraser's party together. William was driven to what he claimed was his home, and when the van left, he ran to his house. William kept associating with William. On March 25th, William and William abducted 50-year-old runaway Harry Todd Turner from a Los Angeles street. Harry had escaped a boys' home in Lancaster 4 days prior. William later testified that he and William lured Harry into William's van with an offer of $20 for relation. After sodomizing Harry, William bit into his penile until it tore, and then ordered William to beat him up. After William bludgeoned and beat him, William strangled him to death. His body was discarded behind Los Angeles business. On April 10th, William was discharged from parole. He encountered 16-year-old Bellflower youth Stephen John Wood walking to school. Stephen's older brother had introduced him to William, so he willingly entered William's van. His hog-tied body was discarded in Long Beach alleyway close to the Pacific Coast Highway. William allegedly waited until dusk to discard it. Stephen's autopsy revealed that he had been killed by strangulation. Why? Why did they let him release this man? Oh my gosh. On April 29th, William encountered 19-year-old Darren Kendrick at his workplace in Staten. William lured Darren into the van on the pretext of selling him drugs. William then drove to Vernon's apartment in Lakewood. There he asked Darren whether he was gay. Darren attempted to flee. William and Vernon bound him, and Vernon sodomized him. William raised the volume of Vernon's sound system to cover Darren's screams. Vernon then held Darren mouth open while William poured chlorohydrate down his throat, causing him to sustain chemical burns. Man, this guy, oh my God, he is crazy. The kid started fading out, just kind of whimpering. I don't like aping some limp piece of meat. It's no fun if they don't let me know how it feels. Guess we gave him too much of that stuff. Next time I figured I wouldn't use as much. Anyways, I've gotten my rocks off, and the kid was getting boring. No fun anymore. So I unalived him. Sick, nasty fuck. Why would you describe that of Darren Lee Kendrick? Darren fought his attackers, but stopped before complaining of dizziness. William then strangled him, and Vernon drove an ice pick into his ear, fatally wounding his cervical spinal cord. His body was discovered behind a warehouse close to the Artesia Freeway. On May 12, 1980, William abducted and unalived an acquaintance of his. He later stated that he decided to unalive them when he had awoken that morning because he was tired of having him around. What? The body of 17-year-old Lawrence Sharp was discovered behind a Westminster gas station. His body was found on the 18th of May, and his autopsy revealed that he had been bound, sodomized, beaten, and strangled. On May 19th, William asked Vernon to accompany him on an unaliving. However, Vernon reportedly refused. Unassisted, William abducted 14-year-old Southgate boy Sean King in Downey. Sean was strangled to death before his body was discarded in Ucapa. William then visited Vernon's apartment and bragged to him about the unaliving. In the early 1980s, uh, Williams' unalivings were receiving considerable media attention, and leading gay rights activists had offered a reward totaling $50,000 for information leading to the conviction of the suspect or suspects, having by his stage determined a definite link between many of the recent unalivings. Investigators from the jurisdictions where victims had been abducted or discovered had begun sharing information in their hunt for the suspect or suspects. Six officers from three of the jurisdictions formed a task force dedicated to their apprehensions. By May, William had been arrested for auto theft. On May 28th, he overheard the details of the ongoing unalivings on a local radio broadcast and confided to a counselor that he knew the perpetrator's modus operandi, which was described to him by Williams 2 months prior. This counselor reported Williams' suspicions to the police, who in turn relayed the confidential tip to the Los Angeles Police Department. Homicide Sergeant John St. Louis. John conducted an extensive interview with William the next day, although William withheld the fact that he had accompanied William on one of his unalivings. The information he provided led John to deduce that William might be the freeway unaliver. That same day, William invited 18-year-old homeless drifter James Michael Monroe, who had encountered while cruising for young male prostitutes, to move into his family's home in exchange for relation. James was a runaway from St. Clair, Michigan, who had been evicted from his family's home in early 1980. James had gone to California to meet a friend but became homeless after he was robbed of money that he earned as a male prostitute in Hollywood. While at Williams' home, James, who was bisexual, began a consensual relationship with him. He accepted an offer of employment, a dependable drive away. James later described an initial impression of William as being a good guy and really normal. On June 1st, William informed James that he wanted them both to abduct, relation assault, and murder a hitchhiker. The police investigation into Williams' background revealed his extensive history of convictions for relation assaulting teenage boys. John assigned a surveillance team to monitor his movements. They began surveilling William on the evening of June 2nd, 1 hour prior to William and James discarding the body of William's final victim. Hours earlier, William and James encountered 18-year-old Stephen J. Wells on El Segundo Boulevard. William and James enticed him into the van. According to the pair, upon leaving, Stephen was Stephen was bisexual. William had consensual relation with Stephen before persuading him to go to his parents' house. There the two continued having relations. Later, William paid Stephen $200 to allow himself to be bound with a clothesline. Stephen became suspicious of their intentions and frantic. William retreated to the kitchen, telling James they were both going to unalive Stephen. Then they grabbed and beat him in a hallway. Stephen pleaded for his life, but William strangled him to death. William ordered James to retrieve a cardboard box which with the two placed Stephen's body inside of and carried to William's van. Later, while driving to um, Vernon's apartment, William informed James that he, Vernon, and others had committed many of the freeway unalivings. At the apartment, William invited Vernon to view Stephen's body in the van. William then asked where he should dispose of the corpse. James later testified that Vernon dissuaded William from discarding it in nearby canyons and recommended discarding him near a gas station. They drove to a disused gas station in Huntington Beach and discarded him there. The body was discovered 5 hours later by two brothers who had parked nearby. William and James returned to William's house. Later that night, William hinted to James, who was fearful for his life, that he should stay quiet regarding Stephen's unaliving or else face potential death. Yo, I would have stopped right there. Like, he let me live. I would have been on my business and not be talking to this man at all. After 9 days of uneventful surveillance, on June 11th, plainclothes police observed William driving throughout Hollywood, unsuccessfully attempting to lure five separate boys into his van before succeeding in luring one. The police followed William until he parked at a service station close to the Hollywood freeway. then discreetly approached the vehicle. Upon hearing screams and banging sounds coming from inside the van, the officers forced their way inside. They discovered William aping 17-year-old Orange County runaway Harold Eugene Tate, whom he had handcuffed and bound. William was initially charged with the ape of a minor and held on suspicion of Miranda's unaliving. He was detained in lieu of $250,000 bond. Later, William's girlfriend noted his boss of his arrest, adding that the arrest was a connection to the freeway killer case. This caused James, who was already apprehensive at William's absence from work that day, to become frantic. The next day, James stole William's car and fled back to Michigan, where he temporarily resided before being arrested. Inside William's van, investigators discovered numerous artifacts which proved his capability in the freeway killer unalivings. This included various restraining devices, knives, and a tire iron. They also noted the removable door handles. A forensic examination of the van and Williams' home revealed extensive traces of bloodstains inside a glove box. Investigators discovered a scrapbook of newspapers clippings related to the unalivings. Williams' 61-year-old father died of cirrhosis of the liver on October 11, 1980, 4 months after Williams' arrest. His conditions sourced from his excessive alcohol addiction. I tied him up with nylon, his electrician type of wire. I put a knife on him, and he got scared. I stabbed him in the left arm. It surprised me that I did it. I stabbed him again and then again and again and again until he was helpless. They would try to stop me from stabbing them, and I wouldn't stab just to stab. I stuck them with the knife in different places because I didn't know where to stab. You know, I don't know where the vital organs were or any like that. Although initially alleging his innocence in the unalivings, William confessed his guilt to John after reading a letter from Sean King's mother imploring him to reveal the location of her son's body. William made sure to clarify, however, that was not to ease the mother's pain, but on the knowledge that because Sean was buried in San Bernardino County, police would likely buy him a hamburger for lunch on the extensive trip. Oh, he did that for a hamburger. Over the course of several evenings, William confessed to abducting, aping, unaliving 21 young men and boys in graphic detail. He expressed no remorse for his actions, but showed extreme embarrassment and regret over being caught. An Orange County investigator recalled that there was not a policeman in the room that did not want to unalive William. For his confession, William stated that his primary accomplice in the murders had been Vernon, while Gregory and James were accomplices in other unalivings. William was physically linked to many of the unalivings by blood and semen stains. Numerous carpet fibers found up seven of the victims' bodies were to precise match with the carpeting in William's van. Furthermore, on the three bodies, investigators found hair samples which were a precise match with William. Medical evidence revealed that six of the unalivings for which he was charged were committed by a unique woodlass strangulation method, which was later referred to by Williams' prosecutor as a signature or a trademark. Initially formally arranged for the unaliving of Grabs on July 25th, by July 29th, William had been charged with an additional 15 murders to which he had confessed and upon which the prosecution believed they had significant evidence to obtain a conviction. In addition to his 16 murder indictments, he was also charged with 11 counts of robbery, one count of sodomy, one count of mayhem. He was held without bond. Damn. William was not brought to trial for the unalivings of Mark Sheldon, Robert Rostick, John Kilpatrick, Michael McDonald, or the November 1979 John Doe because police did not find sufficient evidence linking him alone to the crimes. This is despite William confessing to the unalivings of John and Michael. On August 8th, all charges were formally submitted against William. 3 days later, his legal representative, he remained Williams' attorney until October 1981, when, at Williams' request, he was replaced by William Charvet and Tracy Stewart. Ha! Based on Williams' confession, police obtained a warrant authorizing a search of Vernon's Lakewood property on the same date as William initially arraignment. As this July 25th, 1980 search uncovered evidence linking Vernon to several unalivings with William, which already confessed to. Vernon has brought before a municipal court on July 29th, 1980, and charged with accompanying William on six unalivings and three counts of robbery. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department told the press William and Vernon are believed to be responsible for the kidnapping, torture, and murder of at least 21 young males between May 1979 and June 1980, 14 of which have been committed in their jurisdiction. Despite initial proclaiming his innocence, Vernon soon confessed to having accompanied William upon each of the unalivings he was charged with, and to have relation abused several victims. Vernon claimed to have participated in the unalivings, primarily out of fear, claiming it was either go or become the next victim, and he only found the courage to confess upon learning William was in custody. Vernon was adamant that he had only a limited role in the victim's torture, but confessed to actively torturing one of them. He claimed that upon their successful luring a victim into the van, he would typically drive a short distance before stopping the vehicle in order to assist William in restraining and torturing their captive. He claimed his participation in the unalivings was typically limited to restraining the victim, and he admitted mutilating one victim with a wire coat hanger. He said that some victims had been subjected to more extensive blunt force trauma than others because William would escalate the beatings if the victim resisted his relation advances. Oh gosh. Vernon rejected an offer to plead guilty to all charges filed against him in exchange for a life sentence with a minimum of 25 years. Before the possibility of parole, he did not agree to accept any form of plea bargain or to testify against William. He was brought before Orange County Municipal Court Judge Richard Orozco on November 14th, 1980, where he was formally charged with participating in three unalivings committed in the county. His trial was scheduled for July 27th, 1981. Gosh. On July 31st, 1980, Gregor, no, that's James, was arrested in his hometown Port Huron, Michigan. He was extradited to California and charged with Stevens unaliving. He pled innocent to all charges against him on August 14th. Gregory, who was in Texas, discussed his role in the Miranda and McCabe unalivings in a record phone conversation with a friend, thus sustaining Williams' earlier confession. And on August 22nd, Gregory was arrested. He was charged by California authorities with the unalivings of Miranda and McCabe. On December 18th, he pled not guilty to two charges of first degree unaliving, but at two pretrial hearings in May 1981, he pled guilty. First degree unaliving charges were brought against 20-year-old acquaintance of William Eric Martin Weneditz in December 1980. After police learned William had willingly accompanied William and Harry Todd Turner's unaliving, Eric charges were dropped in January 1981 with the county prosecutor citing insignificant evidence as a cause. They were doing too much. At a preliminary hearing held in Los Angeles County before Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Julius Leatham on January 2nd, 1981, William formally pled innocent to 14 first-degree unaliving charges and numerous counts of sodomy, robbery, and mayhem. In 11 of these indictments, a felony murder, a felony unaliving robbery special circumstances was also alleged. William was ordered to return to court on January 7th for pre-trial motions and the formal setting of a day trial. He know he not innocent. He didn't stop lying. On the 7th, Vernon was arraigned on 5 counts of unaliving and 3 counts of robbery. By this point, he had been listed as an accomplice in the unalivings of Ludwig, Shelton, Grabs, Hayden, Morello, Warstick, Kendrick, Stephen, and the November 1979 John Doe. 4 days after his formal plea, he committed suicide. Ooh, Vernon. By hanging himself with a towel in his cell. He had attempted suicide at least 4 times prior to his arrest. His attorney, Joe Ingberg, theorized that his depressive state had been magnified by the impending release of transcripts of his client's testimony at the plenary hearing, in which Vernon had graphically described his victim's torture. He was worried about the effect it would have on his friends and family. The suicide rendered Vernon record testimony in 3 cases inadmissible as evidence. The charges against William in relation to Mark Warstick and the John Doe were dropped in early 1981. Wow. So he wasn't charged with that. Both Gregory and James agreed to testify against William in court in exchange for being spared the death penalty. The dismissal and additional charges of sodomy and robbery filed against Gregory in the case of no, James. In the case of Gregory, Norris agreed to accept 2 separate pleas of guilty to first-degree unaliving. This was in exchange of 2 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment with a possibility of parole after 25 years, and Gregory agreed to testify against William at the both upcoming trials. William Pugh also agreed to testify, having pled guilty to 1 count of voluntary manslaughter, for which he later received 6 years in prison. So he's out. He good. On October 19th, 1980, William was brought to trial in Los Angeles County charged with the unaliving of 12 of his victims, whose bodies had been found within the constituency. He was tried before Superior Court Judge William Neat. The trial commenced on November 5th. Norris, acting as prosecutor, sought the death penalty for each count of unaliving for which William was tried. Norris described William's routine and technique with regards of his victims' torture and how he would reach the climax of an orgy by unaliving them. He asserted that William unalived as a group sport with accomplices that he had groomed because of their low mentality. Gregory and James testified against William, describing their unalivings in graphic detail. Gregory testified to this participation in the unalivings of Miranda and McCabe, describing how the 2 victims were beaten and tortured before being unalived. He said that William had pressed a tire iron against Miranda's neck, and Gregory jumped down on him, unaliving him. They, they both need to be thrown into the ocean with the strongest current. The strategy of Charvet and Stewart was to challenge the credibility of the persecution's witness and to suggest that significant mitigating factors as to the cause of Bowen's behavior lay in extensive physical uh, relation and emotional abuse he had endured throughout his early life. They summoned Dr. Foster, an expert of developmental efforts to abuse on children, to testify as to the conclusion of his psychological examinations of William. He opened that as a result of repeated abandonment as a child, William had not received the nurturing, protection, and behavioral feedback necessary for sufficient physiology development. He had the abuse he said the abuse of William had been so consistent and prevalent that he was confused as to the difference between violence and love. No, he wasn't. In a direct rebuttal, the prosecution summoned forensic psychiatrists and noted expert in impulsive control disorder and sexual sadism disorder who testified that Williams' behavior was inconsistent with an ability to control his impulses and that his actions were reflective of planning and opposed and impulsive behavior. He concluded that William was a sexual sadist and that although he suffered from an antisocial personality disorder, neither of these conditions had impaired his ability to control his actions. Thank you. On November 24th, 1980, prison inmate Lloyd Douglas testified that William had bragged to him of his culpability in the freeway killer unalivings while both were in Los Angeles County Jail in 1980. Douglas then alleged sauceless details regarding Williams' torture of victims that were otherwise not supported with valid evidence. In cross examination, Douglas concealed he had only related these claims to authorities after pleading guilty to charges of voluntary manslaughter and second-degree burglary against him. He also testified of being Lawrence Sharp's uncle. Against overruled objections from the defense, Fresno-based reporter David Lopez waived his previously sought immunity under California's shield law and agreed to testify on behalf of the prosecution as to the details of 7 interviews William had granted him between 1980 and April 1981. Lopez testified that William had said he would refuse to talk with any other reporter if Lopez would agree not to broadcast the precise details of the interview. When Lopez had agreed to these conditions, William confessed to him that he was the freeway killer and that he had unalived 21 victims. William had confided that although he resented the prospect of being executed, he had opted to commit unaliving simply because he had enjoyed the sound of kids dying. What the mentally insane? When Lopez asked William what he would be doing if he were still at large, William had replied that he would still be unaliving because it got easier with each one we did. Lopez initially refused to disclose Williams' confession, but changed his mind after William broke his own promise by talking to other reporters. Upon cross examination, Williams' defense attorney ensured that Lopez conceded that his testimony was based upon what he had recalled from the interviews, as opposed to any handwritten notes. He also denied he had received any form of payment to testify. Okay. On December 28th, the jury formally began their deliberations. On January 6, 1982, they convicted William of 10 of the unalivings for which he was tried. He was found not guilty of the unalivings of Longeren and Sean, of committing sodomy upon Grabs, of committing mayhem upon Longeren. But he did all these, though, and of robbing one other victim. Later, the prosecution and defense made alternate pleas for the actual sentence. The jury should decide, with Norris requesting the death penalty and Shervert requesting life imprisonment. The jury further found that the special circumstances required within California state law multiple unalivings and robberies. have been met in the cases of which William was found guilty and thus unanimously recommended he receive the death penalty. William was cleared of Sean's sodomy and unaliving because he had led police to Sean's body in 1980 under the agreement that this doing so could not be used against him in court. Therefore, the prosecutors had discussed Sean's disappearance at the trial, but not the discovery of his body. He was cleared of charges of mayhem and unaliving against Londrin because, according to Lopez, he had strangely denied committing this particular unaliving in their interviews. Oh my God. He had a total disregard for the sanctity of human life in civilized society, sadistic, unbelievable, cruel, senseless, and deliberately premeditated, guilty beyond the possible of imaginary doubt. The Los Angeles court judge, William Nee. In February, Sherwood agreed against imprisonment of the death verdict returned by the jury. Despite his impassioned appeal, Judge William formally sentenced William to death for the 10 unalivings in order that if his death sentence were commuted to one of the life imprisonment, the sentence should run consecutively. William was then ordered to await his execution via the gas chamber at San Quentin State Prison. He remained unmoved upon learning of the sentence, having earlier informed his attorney he fully expected to receive the death penalty. Of course you did. You did this and you know you did this and you still got away with it. Literally. Prior to his scheduled second trial in Orange County, William was temporarily removed from death row and held in solitary confinement, where he remained until the conclusion of his trial. This was largely due to the fact that he had previously received a severe beating by an incarcerated gang member with whom he had shared a cell. While William was in solitary confinement, Sherwood attempted to secure a change of venue, saying the extensive pretrial publicity surrounding the case in Orange County untamed jury within the jurisdiction. This motion was refused by Judge Kenneth Lane, who ruled in November that there had only been minimal publicity surrounding Williams' case in Orange County following his earlier convictions. Yep, thank you. William was brought to trial in Orange County on March 21st, 1983. He was charged with the robbery and unaliving of four further victims whose bodies have been found within the jurisdiction. He was tried before Superior Court Judge Kenneth Lay. 204 prospective jurors were subjected to voir dire jury selection until 16 were picked up in June. Williams' attorney then renewed an earlier filed motion that the trial should be moved outside of Orange County due to pre-trial publicity tainting the jury pool. He already said no. The four victims were unalive within the Constitution and had been abducted while hitchhiking, then ordered to strip before being bound, aped, beaten, tortured, and strangled in each instance. The ligature had left an impression upon the victim's neck. He also noticed similarities in each unaliving, and between these, the two of those for which William had earlier been convicted in Los Angeles County, Miranda and Stevens. uh, Emphasis was placed upon the fibers found up upon each of the Orange County victims and three Los Angeles County victims, being a precise match to the computer in Williams' van. As much as Brown stated, the four Orange County victims have been unalived by the same individual who had unalived them, Miranda and Stephen, and his accomplices in the Miranda and Stephen unalivings. Gregory and James would testify as to their participation, and prosecution presented forensic experts testified on the matching fibers and blood found in the van. Chevrolet refuted these contentions, saying that any similarities and modus operandi did not automatically prove his client's guilt, and the evidence presented did not support the prosecution's contention beyond a reasonable doubt. And William had unalived any of the four Orange County victims or the two Los Angeles County victims. Chevrolet attacked the credibility of James and contended William was simply a scapegoat for four unsolved unalivings. He also argued that Brown had spent more time discussing the two Los Angeles cases. William had been convicted for more than actually proving William had committed any of the Orange County unalivings. During the 6-week trial, William's attorneys called two witnesses in his defense. One of them was James, who conceded William had communicated with him prior to his testifying in his second trial, requesting that he lie while testifying. This man is not innocent. Why is this lawyer trying to say this man is innocent? Oh, this man got away with so much dirt. It's making me mad. On August 1st, both counselors delivered their closing arguments and their jury retired. They deliberated for less than 3 hours before announcing on the 2nd that they had found William guilty of each count of unaliving and robbery after 3 days. Deliberating Williams' penalty on August 22nd, 1983, the jury announced their recommendations that he be sentenced to death on each count. On August 26, 1983, William received four further death sentences. Following these convictions, William was transferred from the Orange County Jail back to San Quentin State Prison to await execution. Viva the gas chamber. Oh my gosh, thank you. Somebody found him guilty. In his years on death row, William undertook painting and writing. He wrote a series of short stories called Doing Time Stories from the Mind of Death Row Prisoner. He became close friends with convicted unalivers William Bitter, Randy Kraft, who shared the nickname Freeway Killer, Douglas Clark, and Jimmy Lee Smith. He also corresponded with numerous individuals, including the mothers of some of his victims. To the mothers, he never expressed regret or remorse over the murders, purposefully withholding information his victims' families sought and seemingly deriving pleasure from their discontent. William once informed the mother of Sean King that her son had been his favorite victim as he was such a screamer. This man has mental problems. William told both his defense attorneys and several people with whom he corresponded with Vernon he had actual ringleader behind the unalivings and he had simply been Vernon's accomplice. These claims would be refuted by prosecutor Sterling Norris at Williams' Los Angeles County unaliving trial, who said before Williams' execution he was the leader and he chose weak people he could use. Ain't no lie. William was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection in 1992, following the execution of Robert Alton Harris, the first inmate California had executed since 1967. Robert had exhibited evident symptoms of discomfort following convulsions for up to 4 minutes throughout his 15 minutes in the gas chamber. As such, he stated of California opted to use lethal injection as an alternate execution method, branding the gas chamber as cruel and unusual. Oh, well, you deserved it. William filed numerous appeals against his convictions and sentencing, citing issues such as jury prejudice. Okay. Despite upholding the convictions, the Supreme Court poured scorn upon Judge Need for failing to fully heed a warning given to the prosecution prior to the Los Angeles County trial that James had discussed the possibility of agreeing to legal representation by covert prior to his testimony, despite admission Carver for potential conflict of interest. Judge Need had permitted him to act as Williams' defense attorney at his first trial. However, the Supreme Court ruled in 1989 that Charvert had effectively cross-examined James at trial and that Need's actions, though inexplicable, had no effectively harmed Williams' legal defense. Merit was given to Williams' contention that his defense should have been allowed the stipulation to the testimony of the victims' parents rather than being allowed to identify photographs of their sons in both life and death at his trials. Despite this ruling, this finding was also deemed not to have affected the overall verdict. A final submission to the United States Supreme Court of Appeals submitted. Oh my God, you just accept it. You're gonna freaking die, man. Like nobody cares. That's why your appeals keep getting appeared. appeal, rejected. Just take your fate. Stop making it linger. Thank you. So, on February 20th, 1996, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Williams' plea for clemency on the grounds of inadequate legal representation of both trials. Thank you. I think I accept the fact that this may come about, and I've made my peace with it. And if it happens, it happens. As far as how I'm going to feel at that very moment, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I don't think any of us would know until we're there. Well, probably I went into the service too soon because I was peaking in my bowling career. So I regret that I didn't get to go out and get the instruction and pursue that because I've always had a love for bowling. Bowling reflected on his impending execution. William was executed by lethal injection inside the gas chamber at San Quentin State Prison on February 23rd, 1996. 14 years after his first death sentence, he had been imposed. He was the first person to be executed by lethal injection in the history of California. He should have got that gas chamber. In his first interview given to a local radio station less than 24 hours before his death, Williams said that he had made peace with the fact that he was about to die. Good. Adding that his major regret in life was that he had not pursued his teenage passion of bowling long enough to turn professional. He expressed his disagreement with the state's decision to execute him, saying he thought the death penalty was wrong. He denied responsibility of his actions. Of course, there's no accountability. He don't want to take accountability, saying that he had no control over his actions. Bullshit. He also said that he would not be able to live a normal life outside of prison. Of course, he needs to go to a mental institution. At 6 p.m. on the 23rd, William was removed from his cell on death watch cell where he ordered his last meal. Nobody cares. The last hour was spent with five people he had chosen, including his attorney, his chaplain, and a prospective biographer. His attorney said that he had not detected any remorse in William. Of course, he did this for pleasure, he did this for fun. It was sexual gratification. Around 1 hour prior to his scheduled execution, the Supreme Court refused to hear Williams' final plea to overturn his death sentence, deciding that Williams' attorney had not failed to give him adequate legal representation, but not early submitting claims to discover evidence assisting to Williams' innocence because there is none. Now, at 11:45 p.m., William was escorted from his holding cell into the execution chamber. In his final statement given to the prison warden an hour before his scheduled execution at midnight, William again expressed no remorse for his crimes. He left a note that stated, I feel the death penalty is not an answer to the problems at hand. I feel it sends the wrong message to the people of this country. Young people act as if they see other people acting, instead as people tell them to act. I would advise that when a person has a thought of doing anything serious against the law, that before they should go to a quiet place and think about it seriously. William was pronounced dead at 12:13 a.m. He was 49. None of William's relatives chose to witness his execution, although the event was witnessed by several relatives of his victims. According to several witnesses, Williams' execution passed without complications. He was heavily sedated throughout the latter stages of the procedure. On this subject, Governor Pete Wilson, who had rejected and submitted plea for clemency from William attorneys 3 days before the execution, called William a poster boy for capital punishment. William's family refused to claim his remains. Damn! Following his execution, his remains were cremated in a private ceremony with none of his family members present, and his ashes were later scattered over the Pacific Ocean. 3 weeks after the execution, authorities discovered that his mother had openly exploited an administrative error pertaining to her son's Social Security disability payments, with William had begun receiving for a mental disability in 1972 and which should have terminated upon his 1982 imprisonment. To maintain payments on her Downey home, this administrative error, totaling approximately $79,424, was only discovered after a funeral director notified the Social Security Administration of William's death. His mother agreed to pay restitution after receiving these payments in March, claiming neither she nor her son were aware of the illegality of their actions. Throughout William's trials, and in the years of his subsequent incarceration on death row, experts devoted much speculation on the debate as to whether the root cause of his crimes lay in his abusive, dysfunctional upbringing. One of William's lawyers was quote stating, "Virtual impossible for William to be a successful human being given the abuse he endured," while a prospective biographer said he was essentially unable to handle minute problems in his day-to-day life due to trauma. Bullshit. David McVicker, who witnessed Williams' execution, was traumatized by his ordeal for several years. He was haunted by nightmares on a nightly basis concerning the incident, dropped out of high school, and became dependent on drugs and alcohol. He described the execution as being symbolic to closure. In the following years, he actively campaigned to ensure that his accomplices, Gregory and James, remained incarcerated. James was sentenced to a term of 15 years to life for the second degree of Stephen. In 1981, he has repeatedly appealed the sentence, claiming that he had not known William was the freeway killer until after Stephen's unaliving, that he had been tricked in acting a plea bargain whereby he pleaded guilty to his second degree unaliving charge. He has also written to successive governors requesting that he be executed rather than undergo life imprisonment of what he claims is a crime I didn't commit. He was repeatedly being denied parole and is incarcerated at Moore Creek State Prison. He is next up available for parole in 2029. Damn. Gregory was sentenced to a term 25 years to life for the first degree unaliving of Miranda in 1982. He was later sentenced to concurrent term of 25 years to life for the abduction and murder of Maccabee on May 25, 2016. Gregory died of injuries he had sustained 2 days previously when he was attacked by another inmate in an exercise yard at Moore Creek State Prison. Wow. William was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the voluntary manslaughter of Harry Turner in 1982. He had initially been charged with the first degree unaliving of what's his name, Harry, in addition to accompanied charges of robbery and sodomy. However, after 5 days of deliberation, the jury found William guilty of the reduced charge of manslaughter and innocent of robbery and sodomy. He served less than 4 years of his sentence and was released from prison in 1985. This is what William ate.